Good to go? Okay. Welcome to the special meeting of May 13th, May 12th, 2025. Site plan approval hearing. I call this meeting to order at 5 p.m. Please note that Councillor Maxwell has sent her regrets. However, we do have quorum. We have a fixed agenda this evening. As mayor, I want to ensure transparency and clarity in our development process. In accordance with sections 231 to 233 of the Municipal Government Act, and Section 4.1.27 of our land use bylaw, the site plan approval process is conducted by our development officer without the need for a public hearing. This streamlined approach is designed to assess proposed developments against the clear, predetermined criteria established by council through our planning documents. On April 3rd, 2025, the development officer approved a site plan application after determining it met all required standards under the LUB. The applicant was notified of the approval that same day, and following this, on April 4th, 2025, the town issued appeal notifications to all property owners within 30 meters of the subject property. In accordance with legislation, these owners were given until April 22nd, 2025 to file an appeal. When an appeal is submitted, it must clearly demonstrate how the approved development fails to meet the criteria laid out in the town's planning documents. Once all appeals are heard, council will make a final decision to uphold or overturn the development officer's approval. It is important to note that council's role in this process is not to introduce new requirements or respond to personal preferences, but to ensure adherence to our established planning framework. We will begin tonight with an overview of the application and review process by staff. And council, you'll be able to ask questions to them once they've completed the overview. The floor is yours. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Good. Well, start off by saying hi, council, mayor, and everyone who attended. A quick introduction. My name is Ben. I'm one of the development officers for the town of Kentville, and I was the one who approved this site plan approval. So I am here give a presentation on that review process, the regulations, criteria, and everything that allowed me to say yes. There was a report that I created as well that is much more detailed than what this presentation will be. So I do resort to that report a little bit in this presentation. But by the end of this presentation, you should still have a overview on why and how I approved this site plan. First and foremost, where is it? So I have it in the dotted thicker border that has phase 3 and the PID. There is no civic address, so that's why only the PID is provided. And so the subject property is what I'm going to call it, is 2 acres. And it is currently vacant, so there's no building on it, it's not being used. And it is zoned medium density, which is the R3 zone. Surrounded land uses. To the south, it borders all of the houses off of Mountain View, which are R1, and there's that one R2 lot. And then to the north is the existing Ebu Court development, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 have little arrows. Those are the townhouses, and then phase 2 were the apartment buildings. So those are 2 phases, and this is for phase 3. But apart from that, on the other side of Me Road, so this property fronts Me Road, there is Charles Road, and there's a couple of multi-unit dwellings on that road, and there's the King's Tech campus as well. So there's quite a few different uses around the property. The proposal itself, the development, so this site plan was to approve 6 8-unit apartment buildings. Each apartment building will be divided half, so 4 bachelor units and 4 2-bedroom units. So in total, We have 48 proposed units, where half, 24, will be bachelor units, and the other half will be 2-bedroom units. And this development must proceed through a site plan approval. However, in order to go into a site plan approval, there needs to be the language and the enabling policy to do so, which is where policy GD30 from the municipal planning strategy comes into play, and it reads, it shall be the intention of council to empower the development officer to negotiate a site plan approval as per the MGA for the development or redevelopment of a lot for the following uses. There's A, B, C, and D, but only A applies. New structures in the R3 zone when such developments abuts the R1 or R2. And as I showed previously, it does. So therefore, site plan approval. And in the land use bylaw, the LUB, which is what I'm gonna say, there's section 5.4.3, and this is in the R3 zone. The following uses shall be permitted by a site plan approval, and B is the one that matters, multi-unit dwellings up to 8 units. So that's why it's 6 8-units and not one 30-unit apartment building, because in that zone, you can go only up to 8 units per building. So there's the where, the what, and how we were able to get into the site plan approval. So let's go into the revision. As a development officer, I guess other DOs can have their own way, but I like to go through the LUB and zoning requirements prior going through the criteria. So this is just to ensure that it is a permitted use, that the lot is adequate for that development, and all other pertaining regulations, which I'll go through. So first, is it a permitted use? As I just mentioned, multi-unit dwellings up to 8 units through a site plan. Check. So knowing that it's a multi-unit dwelling up to 8 units, then you just need to follow the 8-unit criteria and not, the townhouse or single unit. So when reviewing this site plan, we have to make sure that all this complies. So let's go to the site plan itself. There's a lot here. I'll break it down. But the important thing to know right away, that red line is the property boundary. And then further in, there's a gray dotted line, though that is the setback line. So anything within that is then the developable land. Anything past, I don't know if I can get, so anything here, no building can be in here. It has to go at least past the setback boundary. So that's all I'm going to say for now, and then we'll dive into the different components here. So we know it's in the R3 zone, and it has to follow the 8-unit dwelling requirements. For that, we need a lot that is minimally 10,000 square feet. As mentioned, the property is 2 acres, so almost 90,000 square feet. Check. Frontage, that is hard to see, but I learned that you can actually zoom in, which is pretty cool. So 151 right here. And again, minimum is 100. So check. Front yard setback. So front yard setback is the, you have to find your frontage. The frontage is off of Me Road. So 20 feet from that property line. And that is how we got this setback boundary. No building is within that. Perfect. Rear, it's the furthest line from your front property line, which is this. The rear yard setback is 15 feet. No building is there. That is met. Every other property line is considered a side property line. So you have another 15-foot setback. And again, no building is within that. So that is the zoning requirements. However, there are other regulations of the land use bylaw that also need to be met. First one, section 4.1.19. This allows to have more than one main building on the lot. Here we have 6. The requirement is that the minimum distance between the buildings must be a minimum of 20 feet in this case. So I can zoom in if you want again because it's fun. But here you go. So that's what this 20 foot is. So clearly indicates on the site plan that that requirement is being met. Next, amenity space. So whenever a development has 4 or more units, it must meet section 4.1.3. Again, in that report, I had more of a breakdown, but summary, you need 4,800 square feet for the bachelor, 5,400 square feet for the 2 units, so a total of a minimum of 10,200 square feet. This site plan actually provides more than double that at 21,000 square feet, which is a little breakdown on the site plan on the top left corner. But all that to say, pretty much everything you see in green, that's considered amenity space. And it was provided, so check. Parking. Parking is a bit of a beast on its own. It would take me 30 minutes just to go through all that. So important item here is understanding the calculation. So this is table 4.2 of the land use bylaw, and the second item, multi-unit dwellings that consist greater than 4 dwelling units, needs 1.25 parking spaces per dwelling unit. There's 48 dwelling units being proposed, so 48 times 1.25 equals 60. Exactly 60 parking spaces are being provided, so check. However, whenever there's 4 or more parking spaces, then there's another section of the land use bylaw, 4.2.3. There's 20 some different regulations, and they vary everything from the minimum and maximum width of the driveway to snow removal to buffering to stormwater management. So there's quite a big list. Again, that was provided in the report, but ultimately all those requirements were met as well. So that is the LUB requirements and standards. So now let's go into the site plan criteria. So the first one, the location of new structures is located on the lot so as to minimize any adverse impacts on the surrounding neighborhood, including but not limited to noise, dust, or lighting. This is, again, as a DO, this is sort of the last one I check. Because as we'll see through the criteria, all the criteria are implemented to reduce the impact on the neighbors. So once you can figure all of that stuff out, so we know that the lighting is good, that we are dealing with the dust, that we are dealing with stormwater management, that we are dealing with all the setbacks, well, now I know that I can confidently say, like, okay, all reduction of impact on neighbors are met. I can now approve this. So this is the last one that I usually check off. However, for the sake of this presentation, considering that the lot is very oddly shaped and it is a medium density zone, so we want to meet that medium density. Considering the shape, the density, and that all other criteria were met, check. The second one, the location of off-street parking and loading facilities are located and designed as to minimize any adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood. This was reviewed with Traffic Authority, and that was attached to the report. There was a memo stating that they reviewed and approved this as well. Third item, The location, number, and width of ingress and egress points are designed to prevent traffic congestion, nuisance, and inconvenience in the area and minimize any adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood. Here's an example of one of the different versions. I think there was, I honestly forgot, 4, 5 different versions. And ultimately, when the application first came in, the main access was off of Ibu Court. And then there would have been a emergency access off of Me Road. That just did not meet standard, because if there was an emergency, so emergency vehicles, they need quick access. These are going to be rentals, so there's going to be moving trucks all the time. So we needed a main access off of Me Road. So obviously there had been some redesigns, all that stuff. But ultimately, through several conversations with the DO, the different directors, and the applicant, actually, now that I'm thinking about it as well, Me Road is a provincial road. It's not within the town. So once we knew that we were going to have the main egress off of Me Road, we actually had to require or get the permit from the province to approve that entrance. That has been issued, so we do have the permit from the province to do that. So with all those conversations, ultimately it was reviewed and approved by traffic. D, this is buffering. These are just fancy ways of just saying buffering. Another example of a review and different revisions. Towards the end, I'm pleased to show that there is now buffering all along. That was not the case when it was first submitted. And parking requires its own buffering and whatnot, so that's why there's quite a bit of buffering on the west, but the most important is the buffering on the south. These buildings are at the 15-foot setback. They do meet requirements, so there's no question about that. But because they are right there, and that this is a criteria that the DO can enforce, I did request to, strengthen the buffering on the South Shore to really provide a good buffering between those apartment buildings and the houses or the rear yards of the houses on Mountain View. So what it came down to is dense green buffer, and I was very pleased with the word dense, because dense just means that you look at it and you can't really see through it, right? So whatever combination of shrubs or trees or whatnot, doesn't matter, but as long as it's dense, you look at it, you're like, okay, yeah, that is blocking light, is blocking visual aspects, and then obviously that helps with noise and all that as well. However, that's still not enough, because they can just plant everything. We take a picture, it's like, yeah, that's dense, but then all the trees die next year. Well, that's not really helpful. So we also have the ability to put language in an LOU, so a letter of undertaking. A letter of undertaking is the agreement that the town and the applicant will sign, and it's actually registered to the property. So once you look at this property, that letter of undertaking's there, and we will put the language in that letter to say that that buffer needs to be continuously maintained. You can't just plant it once and let go of it. There has to be a continuous dense green buffer. There was conversations about putting a fence and whatnot, but just because of the landscape and all that, the green buffer was the way to go. And of course, nature, thumbs up. Existing vegetation, so it's sort of the same thing. It just says preserve as much as you can. Well, not only are we trying to preserve what's there, but we're enhancing it and fortifying it to provide that buffer. So, check. F, it talks about connectivity. Again, another example of revisions and whatnot, but this Site plan has great connectivity now. So right from Me Road, you can access every apartment building, every parking stall. And after revisions, you can now actually access all amenity space, the previous phases of Ibu Court, and the proposed parkland on the west there. So the moment you're in this development, you have connectivity to everything. Check. Lighting, outdoor lighting. So we did request a lighting plan. It was provided, and the plan shows that all buildings and parking lots are illuminated without interfering on or being directed on the neighbors. Check. Solid waste. So refuse storage has now been provided and is on the site plan. The location actually makes total sense for where it is for the trucks and quick access from the apartment buildings and not next to the amenity where people are going to be playing and all that. And whenever you do provide refuge storage, there is section 4.1.24 of the land use bylaw. Those criteria are met. Again, that is illustrated in the report that I provided. Easements, no easements on the property, so that was simple. Signs, there's going to be no development signs, so there's not going to be a new owl or anything. They're the only sign that is going to be required because of the amount of units. There's going to have to be a lane sign, but that lane sign does not trigger this criteria. So check. Storm and surface water, a stormwater management plan was requested, it was provided, and it was reviewed and approved by the town engineer. Again, that was in the memo. And then lastly, everything was met. So the above listed items are maintained in a manner suitable and complementary to the surrounding neighborhood. So that's just another way of saying that there was nothing overseen, everything was looked at in detail and has been met. So all criteria are met with no further concerns. So that, in a nutshell, I guess, was the review that I did. And I just want to reiterate, I know the mayor just said this in the preamble, but it's my last slide. So application, it was received on February 6th. It took about 2 months of negotiations. So on April 3rd is when the DO approved it. Applicant was notified that day. I attached that approval letter in that report. The very next day, we sent out the appeal notice. So all property owners within 30 meters, and the minimum requirement's 14 days, but we gave it 18 days because that was Easter weekend, was within that 14 days. So just to give the grace period, because people were busy or away, we felt it was only fair to extend it to 18 days and not just the minimum 14. Within that appeal period, there was one formal appeal. So that's why we are here at the appeal hearing on May 12th. And as the mayor said, there's 2 options from here. Either council approves the DO's decision or they overturn it. I think that's it. So, questions?
Thank you. I'll open the floor now to any questions to the development officer. Councillor Andrew.
I don't have many questions. I just two. I'm assuming Ibu Court will remain a cul-de-sac. There's no intention in the future. I know that's not specific to this, but that's never going to get knocked down and be a throughway through there.
Okay, so I mean, sort of the point. Yeah, this is specifically for phase 3 and the criteria and the regulations for the development of phase 3.
Sorry, so just the one exit and entry on Me Road.
No, but there will be. So there's going to be the main egress ingress off of Me Road, but there is a secondary. So So if I can get my cursor, yeah, so here, and then it connects to here, and then right here. So this is the cul-de-sac of Ebu Court. So it's going to be more narrow, but adequate for a secondary.
Okay. My other question is, so there's a 5-foot buffer.
Yes.
So that 5-foot buffer is on this property? Because I know that my grandparents lived at 4 Mountain View, so a 5-foot buffer isn't gonna do a lot unless it's up on the property belonging to the residents, the people who have houses on Mountain View.
Yeah, so we can't, so when all the requirements and regulations have to be within the property that they own. So yeah, it has to be within the subject property. With that said, 5 feet, the reason why I put 5 feet is because that was the language in the land use bylaw. So with criteria, I could have asked for a 7 or 8, but we also have to understand, you know, it's the higher the tree, the more difficult it is to successfully transplant it. So 5 foot, because it was in the land use bylaw, I'm assuming, which you should never do, that research was done and 5 foot was the ideal, you know, height to start trees. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a maximum. You know, hopefully it will grow continuously, and that's why there's that language that buffer needs to be continuously maintained as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I guess just to continue on that question was the density at ground level, because most of those houses on Mountain View are at ground level, so the density of the buffer is important at ground level as much as it is at 5 feet high.
Correct.
Okay, well, thank you for the clarification. My second question is, in the diagram you provided here, there is an amendment area. Was that an amendment you approved on, what is it, April 3rd?
So
That area that includes the parking lot? Sorry, the barrier-free spaces, and then over onto phase 2, it looks like?
Oh.
This here?
Okay, yes, I see. Hey, good eye, good eye. I will actually, so, okay, let me explain. Okay. What Councillor Baker was asking is, there is this area, and I don't know if you can see my cursor. So here and here. And then there's parking spots, and then there's a side yard setback, there's amenity space and all that. So what has happened is that that blue line right here, this one, that is the true property line, okay? This red line is what's going to be proposed once they re-subdivide and clean up the lots and all that. But with that said, because this section, this section is actually outside the property line, I could not consider that in part of the site plan criteria. So for instance, these 10 parking spaces here actually provide 70 parking spaces in total. But with the reduction of these 10, it still meets the 60 that are required. Even removing the amenity space from here, it still meets amenity space criteria. So yes, this is sort of like it's shown within the red property line, but that is the future plan. When it comes to the site plan approval and my review, I had to disregard this section here.
So
but it was still important for the connectivity and to understand how it works as a whole. But within my review, it was not considered.
Thank you.
Hopefully that explains that.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Ben. That was a really great overview. And it appears that everything checks. The letter of undertaking with respect to the buffer and having continuous density, 5 feet high. who checks on that? Who ensures that I'm assuming it's a letter of undertaking that stays in effect it's.
Sure.
It's
Yeah,
infinite, it's-
I mean, the dates could be discussed in the letter, but yeah, to be fair.
Yeah.
That's more director and lawyer.
Okay.
You know, I'm just ensuring that the criteria and stuff are all met.
That the
but
letter
that
would-
yeah,
okay.
but when it comes to the letter of undertaking and the registration and what.
Like who enforces and those.
Right,
types of
but then
things.
when it
Okay.
comes to enforcement,
Right,
that would, I believe, development officer is what it is for the town of Kentville. Correct, yeah.
okay, yep, okay. The 4.1.19, when you talk about the one main building on the lot,
Yes.
so the way that I read it is that was probably the intent, but that because there's going to be more buildings on the lot and there can be 20 feet between them, it's a different way to interpret it, right? Do you follow me?
No. Can you, sorry.
There's obviously more than one main building.
Right.
But the language seems like that it was geared for one main building.
Oh, of section 4.1.19, so.
Yeah, that's okay.
Here, I'll just get it instead of going through all my slides again. So, and I'll read it. It says, more than one main building may be permitted
Okay.
on a lot in the R3 zone with the following requirement, and the requirement is that the minimum distance between the buildings shall be
Okay.
20 feet.
Okay,
So it's saying that more than one building
okay,
is permitted as long as there's that 20 feet or half the height, but this is not 40 feet high, so.
okay. And I just had one more
my
thing.
God.
The setback, against, the setback to the boundary. How many feet is that?
So, the front is 20 feet.
Okay.
The rear and side are 15. So
Or
pretty
50?
much.
Okay, so the
yes.
front is 20.
And then pretty much the rest is all 15.
Gotcha, okay. That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for the development officer? Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
We will now move on to the appellant presentation. And the appellant will present an argument of how the decision of the development officer does not comply with the land use bylaw. And again, we'll invite you up to the podium, just state your name, and for the record, there was only one formal letter, only one appeal letter, so.
There, well, as you know, my name's Caitlin McKay. I'm the appellant. I'm an audiologist with Nova Scotia Hearing and Speech. I work primarily in pediatrics. And I also am an assistant adjunct professor with instructor with Dalhousie. So I've lived on Mountain View for about a year now. And I'd like to object to this under the site plan criteria for the development in residential zones. So I feel that the third phase of this development is being designed in such a way that the maximum number of structures is being put, really in a minimum space, and it's the maximum number of units per building, and it's the minimum distance from, my property and other properties. So under 5.1.12, the location of new structures have to be located on the lot so as to minimize any adverse impacts on the surrounding neighborhood, including but not limited to noise, dust, or lighting. Now, and that has to be under consideration for the shape or density of the property. So I know that a verge of trees has been proposed to control adverse impacts, and I'm aware that the lighting has also been designed, with these bylaws in mind. I already have a thick verge of trees behind my property, and it doesn't mitigate the light, noise, or the effects of construction. And the second phase is some distance from my property, quite far. The other residents and I have discussed that since these developments have been put in, we all have to use blackout curtains. So really, we have, in minimizing these effects, what's being done just isn't enough. So, I really feel like this plan is kind of maximizing everything under the land use bylaws at the expense of the property owners. But frankly, even using blackout curtains, I still need a face mask. I know it's been also proposed that because we can see the top of the mountain, that we still have a mountain view. No, what we have is an apartment view. And soon, with the building going to be the minimum distance, 15 feet, we're going to have people looking right in our windows. I mean, to me, it's really inappropriate that this is even being proposed. I realize that under the land use bylaws, that this plan passes, or it meets the criteria. But under this site plan criteria for development in residential zones, it's really ignoring all of the negative impacts that it has on us, the property owners. Now, the previous phases of the development were planned such that the distance from the adjoining properties and the trees were all there to minimize impacts. This new development, it's just going to make all of these impacts from development 1 and 2 much, much worse. So under the idea of mitigating all these effects, the fact that you're maximizing everything under the land use bylaws, it just doesn't meet the site plan criteria. Under the phases 1 and 2, it was proposed that such trees and etc., ground cover that's there, be maintained where possible. Well, if this third phase of development were to be approved, what we've kind of agreed to for the first and second phase, it just doesn't work. If you were taking a picture of a family member and someone stepped in front of that picture so that all you could see was the top of their head, you wouldn't be happy about that. That's what occurred with phases 1 and 2. Now you have another person standing in front, so your view is even worse. And so to me, that's not mitigating any effect. My neighbors and I certainly realize that housing is needed, and we're certainly willing to do our part. But in terms of, providing affordable family homes that Kentville needs, this really isn't the place for it. Another site development would be much more appropriate, and I feel could mitigate effects much more. So, my first point was under 5.1.12a, but I'd also like to bring up another point about the location of off-street parking and loading facilities that should be located and designed as to minimize any adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. So obviously what we want to do for this development is maximize any amenity space and minimize any adverse impacts, such as off-street parking. Now, all of the parking that's been included in this site plan is surface parking. I feel, and I'm sure my neighbors do as well, that if more green space could be included in consideration of the shape and the density, there would be less negative effects from lighting, more positive effects from residents if parking could be underground. So instead of going for the maximum number of units, the maximum number of buildings that can be fit here, if you were to put some of that parking underground, if you were to make fewer units with fewer buildings, that would be what's mitigating these effects. Not, I feel, this current development as it's proposed. So fewer units, fewer buildings, differently designed parking that would allow for these adverse impacts to be minimized. I feel a different plan would be more appropriate.
You're all done, or?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Any
Thank you.
questions, you wanna ask? I guess yeah, thank you you don't have any questions, Mr.? Yeah, okay. You gave me that look, so I wasn't sure. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we've heard from both the appellant and the development officer. The question now, we'll put it to council. Just want to remind you, though, that we do have to abide by our land use documents. That's what binds us and what we do need to follow. But we will put the motion on the floor that council uphold the development officer's decision to grant the site plan approval. Moved by Deputy Mayor Kroll, and a seconder, Councillor Hamilton. We'll open the floor to discussion.
Could we just see?
Yes, sorry, your mic, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I just saw you look my way. Could we just see the map again? I don't know if you can with the, because I've got a map here and it doesn't maybe change anything for what we're permitted to look at here, but when I look at some of the houses appear to be less than 40 feet, actually some less than 20 feet, but less than 40 feet from the back of their property. And then if you add another 15, like if you can envision it, it really is, that's my concern. It's very close. And these houses, some of them are built. They were built with a view to the North Mountain, which is now obstructed. And including, I could just speak to my grandparents' house and their neighbors that had giant bay windows at the back of their homes, so they could catch that view. Not only is that gone, you're not going to sit in your boxers in your living room any longer if you have someone who is 25. It appears to be 25 to 50 feet from you. That's not very far when we think in context of even this room. So, we may be bound to what we have on paper so far, but anyway, just throw that out there. If you can envision that, it's 15 feet is not very far, and if anyone cares to, in their own time, take up a viewpoint look at this, it's pretty close. Anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've said this before about our land use bylaw and our municipal planning strategy. I think I talked about it when we looked at the Bryson development back a few years ago now, I guess it would be. These are documents that were looked at in my first term between 2016 and 2020. And there have been slight amendments done to them since, but we really do need to look at these two documents as a council, and we really do need to make a plan around what we actually need, what we want to see moving forward. We are where we are right now. To Ben's point, all the boxes are checked. And these are the documents that we are guided by. There's not a lot we can do at this juncture, but we really need to look at these moving forward and make necessary amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or debate from council? Okay, we'll call for the question then. The council upholds the development officer's decision to grant the site plan approval. Do you want the PID number in there? Okay, of PID number 552-66134. There we go. Voting is now open. And voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. we've concluded our fixed agenda, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Savage and Deputy Mayor Cole as the seconder. All those in favor? Motion is carried. We adjourned at 5:44 p.m.